My name is Finn Schiebel, and I am the props designer for USM spring production of Little Women, the Broadway musical. So a props designer's job is to either source, purchase, or create all of the props for the actors. I kind of define a prop as, the objects that the actors hold or carry or interact with. So I get a list from our stage management team of all these different items that the actors use and interact with and carry onto the stage in the different scenes. And then it's my job to find the best fit for the show or the plan for the show for those items. Especially for Little Women, one of the most important things I have to think about is time period and the location of the show. So Little Women takes place actually kind of around here in the New England area, and it's in the 1800s, I want to say 1860s-ish, but it does vary through time as the show goes on. So it's been really important with this show to think about things like, is this object period appropriate for the 1860s? So a suitcase that you might have now isn't going to be the same suitcase that they might have had during that time period. Another thing to take into account is it safe for the actors to be carrying this? Is this item too heavy? Is part of this item going to be difficult for them to interact with? In this show, we have a lot of larger costume pieces like hoop skirts. So I have to take into account, is their costume going to get caught on this thing that they're carrying? So the way I start off any show is I go through the list of all the props we need, and I have to determine, is this something we already have in our stock here? Is this something I think we're going to have to purchase or borrow from an outside source, or if it's something that I'm going to have to make? And I do really enjoy working on shows where I get to make something completely from scratch, and I get to kind of sketch out that design and then have that whole process from the page to the actual product. So some of the cool things I got to make for this show were Joe's writing portfolio. So I had to think about, what would a writer's portfolio from the 1800s look like, and then do some research on that, and then figure out how I wanted to take some of those images I found in my research and turn that into something we could use on stage. I also got to work on some cool puppets for the show. We have some really cool scenes where some of Joe's stories get played out on stage for the audience, and she does a lot of fantasy, fairy tale type stories, so I got to make some cool puppets that we use when we're doing that storytelling on stage. Another thing I worked on, this is a basket of one of the character's belongings that she brings to work with her every day. And so the kind of challenge here was to think about what kinds of things would this character need to bring to their job every day? What do they need to get through their day? They're walking to work, so what do they carry? The direction that I got from the team was this is just the character's basket of things that she brings to work. So I had to think about who the character is, their job, and that kind of thing. So I've got some knitting projects in here, some yarn, some blankets. The character's been at work knitting clothes for the soldiers during the Civil War. So I just had to think about what kinds of things would she need to go and do her job to come back home to her family every day. So this is Joe's writing portfolio that I made. So I've got it open, and we've got pages that the actors can actually take out of here and interact with. They can hand them out, they can rip them out, and then flip through. There's more for pages. And I've got this mechanism here so that she can carry it around on stage and nothing's going to fall out of here. But this portfolio kind of is with her the entire show, either physically or just the idea of it. And because the show kind of shows how she's growing, not only as a person, but as her stories grow, her relationships with people, and how those are reflected in her writing. So it was kind of a big piece I wanted to make sure I did a good job on. So I started with just kind of a cardstocky material folder, and then I added the nice leather to the cover, and I did some accents and ribbon. I know the color for Joe's character in the show that the design team decided on was green, so I wanted to do a green accent bookmark in there. And then I just wanted it to be something where even if the audience isn't seeing everything that's in here, she has real things, real words on them to look at and interact with, just to kind of add that character of Joe to something that's so important to her that contains all of her writing and her life story. This is a bit still of a work in progress. It needs a bit more paint, but I made these bird puppets for one of the storytelling scenes where we're seeing one of Joe's fantasy stories played out on stage. And there's this girl, and she's running through the woods, and she interacts with knights and hags and trolls, and it's a big theatrical moment in the show. And so some of the ensemble members get to come on stage with these big scary birds that are like attacking the girl in the story, and we get to see how she interacts with them, and kind of just the outcome of that girl's story in that moment of the show. I did the bodies of them just out of a thinner wood. I cut them out on the jigsaw. I sanded them down to make sure no actors were going to get any splinters or anything. And then I did cardboard for the wings. I wanted them to be lightweight so they could get that easy, like, billowing in the wind, bird wing flapping appearance. And then I did the tails out of some just leather fabric that I had laying around. I still need to paint these, but after that, they'll be good to go and ready for the show. Another piece I wanted to show off I worked on for the show was this suitcase. So like I said, a challenge that I've run into a little bit is finding pieces in our stock that we have here that work for the show, because it's a period piece. We had a lot of modern suitcases that would have worked for a show that took place in the 2000s or in the past couple of years, but not as much that we could use for the 1800s. And in this scene specifically, one of the characters comes back from London, and she's been there a couple years, she's grown, she's matured, and she's a woman now, and she comes back with like nice new luggage compared to the older luggage that she leaves with. And so I had to figure out, how do I want to communicate, you know, she has nice things now, she has things that are her own. So I had to go through some of the luggage we already had and decide what I could work with. So I decided to give this suitcase a new paint job to make it look a bit newer. It doesn't look like any of the luggage that she leaves with, but to kind of show like, this is hers now, this is from this old life that she was leaving when she was away in Europe. So one of the more challenging things I've had to navigate working on this show is our director really wanted this moment where a kite flies out over the heads of the audience for this really special moment between two of our characters. So I had to figure out how I wanted to make that like theater magic happen for our production. And so the way we've decided to execute that moment of magic and the flight is to actually use a fishing pole and have one of our amazing assistant stage managers up on our catwalk, having the kite attached to the clear fishing line with the string that goes all the way down to the stage where the two actors will be holding the string of the kite. So they're able to sing and dance and move around on stage while they're flying the kite, while the assistant stage manager will help by reeling the kite in and kind of acting as the theater magic of the wind, helping the kite to blow around and then eventually fly away out of sight with the